And we are live. Welcome everybody here for a live Q&A on Celviano Grand Hybrid, Casio's amazing piano that we released last year. If you haven't played one, I'm going to try and demystify it for you. And if you have played one, I'm going to get under the hood a little bit and show you what this instrument is all about. If you're watching live on YouTube, there's a chat window where you can ask questions. I should be able to see those questions up here on the computer screen. So ask away, and I'll do my best to address your questions during this live stream. So thank you very much for joining. So my name is Mike Martin. I'm the General Manager of Marketing at Casio, and the instrument I have here is a Celviano Grand Hybrid. This is an instrument that was developed in collaboration with C. Bechstein, one of the world's most famous and well-known piano brands, certainly been around longer than most others. And we worked with them to develop this instrument, and it's a collaboration in a couple of different ways. First of all, the keyboard action, and secondly, the sounds. So for those of you, again, that haven't played this instrument or seen one in person, this instrument is called a hybrid because it's a combination of acoustic, traditional acoustic, and digital technologies all in one. And one of the things that particularly makes it unique, and I've got this example right here, is the keyboard action itself. And what you'll see is it's a full-length wooden key that's attached to a hammer mechanism that moves in exactly the same fashion, gives you the same vertical movement on the hammer as an acoustic grand piano. So you have a key that's the same as a C. Bechstein grand piano, attached to an action mechanism which Casio has designed, which replicates the movement of the hammer. Of course, we're not striking a string, but these hammers are weighted. In fact, they're weighted differently across the range of the 88 notes to simulate the weight of the different hammers on an acoustic piano. So that's a little bit about the action. It feels absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend that you put your hands on it and check it out, because unlike most hybrid instruments that are out there, we're replicating a grand piano action, and others replicate upright actions, as an example. So certainly until you get into price ranges that are significantly higher than this one, this is a one-of-its-kind instrument, and it's won numerous awards. In fact, we were just nominated again for Digital Piano of the Year from MMR Magazine. So the GP500 is really remarkable. Again, put your hands on it. It feels great. One of the things I'm going to do in this video today, in addition to answering your questions, is dive under the hood, because there's a variety of parameters that you can change, adjust, customize, and really make it your own. So, and great, we have people joining in on the chat. We have Piano Trends Music out of Chicago, wonderful dealer. Thank you for joining us here. Gabri Sapiens. Yes, it is a wonderful, gorgeous instrument. And so I talked a little bit about the action. I'll answer more questions about the action as they come up. But I'm going to dive in and talk a little bit about some of the technology that's under the hood of this instrument. So I do have another camera here, which should allow you to see what I'm seeing on the control panel over here on the side of the instrument. And so one of the first things you'll know is that there are actually multiple piano sounds on this instrument. This is the only instrument available that offers 3 different European grand piano sounds. So these are 3 different world-class instruments. Each have their own character. Each will take you musically to a different place. And of course, I mentioned that we collaborated with C. Bechstein on this instrument, and the first piano that you play on this instrument, the Berlin Grand, is is a C. Bechstein grand piano. So absolutely gorgeous tone. It's pristine, it's crisp, it's clear. And it's also dynamic, you can dig in. So it's a concert level instrument, it's absolutely gorgeous, and the dynamics and the clarity of the Bechstein is absolutely outstanding. The next preset on this instrument is the Hamburg piano. Hamburg Grand, this is the sound that you typically hear in other Casio digital pianos, such as our Privia and other Celviano models. So Hamburg comes from Hamburg, Germany. So much different sound than the Berlin. If I switch back, back to the Hamburg. So they both have a completely different character. They're going to take you to a different place musically, and really gorgeous tone. And the third one on the instrument is a Vienna Grand, and another famous European piano represented here, and really remarkable, beefy low end on this instrument, but still offering some gorgeous subtleties up at the top of the instrument. So absolutely gorgeous. So the three varieties of instruments, again, I think the amazing thing about this instrument is each of them will take you to a different place musically, and I encourage you to get your hands on one of these instruments and experience it not only through the speakers but headphones, and it will take you places. It's absolutely gorgeous. But what I really wanted to dive into today is what this instrument can do under the hood, and how you can start with one of these sounds, and how you can customize the nuances that the Celviano Grand Hybrid can create to further that experience. In the menu here, there's actually something called the Acoustic Simulator, and this is the engine that lets you adjust a variety of nuances and details that this instrument creates to create this incredible simulation of the piano. So the very first parameter on this page is something called hammer response, and that's actually a parameter that I can adjust, but you actually won't hear on this webcast. This is a touch to sound connection. It's a timing element that you can adjust. Of course, it's currently set to D, meaning default, and that's the timing element that Casio has engineered to work best with the action mechanism here, because it doesn't work, this action doesn't work like a light switch. When you press the key, you're not hearing sound instantaneously, so there's some momentum involved with that hammer. So that comes into play when you're sitting at this instrument, and you can adjust that timing element a little faster or a little longer, and that might affect your perception of the weight of the key, the speed of the key, so that's something to experiment with as you make yourself at home with the instrument. But it's not something that audibly we can demonstrate here in this video. What I want to get into next, the following parameters, you'll all be able to hear on the webcast here. So the first one being the lid simulator. So the Grand Hybrid actually, and you can probably see it a little bit in the video. If I move the key here, there's a lid here on the piano that opens up. And it has multiple positions, just like the lid on a grand piano. And this helps project the sound out of the amazing speaker system that we have here. It's an amazing 6-speaker sound system. And when you adjust the lid, not only are you changing the the way the sound projects out of the instrument as it would on a grand piano, but you're also changing the tone of the instrument, similar, again, to lowering the lid on an acoustic piano. The tone's going to be a little bit more subtle. So the switch here in the Acoustic Simulator allows you to override the physical position, because there's actually a switch that's detecting how low or raised this lid is, and allow you to get the timbre associated with that position while still getting the same amount of projection out of the instrument. So if you were looking for a more subtle tone, so I could set it to this closed setting, and now we've got, and if I compare that quickly to removed as an example, so much more present, much more alive, and depending on the type of music you're playing, this is a wonderful parameter that will get you, again, musically where you need to go. So if you're playing a ballad or something subtle, some light jazz, you might want the lid in the closed or semi-open position. If you're playing some more aggressive music, obviously you can set it to the fully open position and so on. So really remarkable attention to detail. Next parameter is something called damper resonance. So this is the resonance of the instrument that is simulated when we use the damper pedal. Excuse me. So obviously there aren't strings in this instrument, so the resonance that is happening is completely simulated by the engine that Casio has created for this instrument. So if I turn this up to 10, and this is quite an exaggeration, when I put my foot on the pedal, you'll hear the resonance of all the dampers released from the virtual strings in this product. So, so just as an example, if I play something up here at the top of the instrument, and then I put my foot on the pedal, you can hear that wonderful resonance ringing out. And again, this is a bit of an exaggeration by setting it all the way to 10. The default for me is personally a little too subtle. So again, depending on whether I'm using speakers, the built-in speakers, or the headphones, I might turn this up a little bit, and it's a wonderful simulation of the effect, the bloom that you get when your foot is down on a grand piano. So I'm going to address one of the questions that's coming up in the chat from Robert, asking about differences in sound between the GP400 and GP500. And he's saying that some people say that one sounds warmer than the other. And that is actually true. There's a couple differences in the instruments. And first, let me explain that the engine in the instruments is exactly the same. The technology under the hood is exactly the same. That there are two differences. One, the GP400 is, the cabinet is physically different. It's physically a little bit higher. So it's a slightly different design cabinet. And with that, the placement of the speakers in relation to the lid is a little bit different. In addition, yes, the EQ of that speaker system is also slightly different. So I would agree that the GP400 sounds a little warmer than the GP500, and it's a little bit of a matter of taste of what you like. I think if you had a GP500, for example, and you wanted it to sound a little bit warmer, remember those lid simulation settings that I was talking about just a couple minutes ago. I think that will get you there. And likewise, if you wanted to brighten up a GP400, you could take that lid simulation the other direction to brighten it up. So again, I think the differences are somewhat subtle, but the differences are cabinetry and slight speaker placement and slight EQ. So I think I don't know where you're from, Robert, but the Americans, I think it's a difference in Americans and Europeans as well. So I think some of the Europeans preferred the warmer sound, and the Americans preferred the slightly more aggressive sound. And again, with the parameters here, you can adjust it. And Piano Trends correctly mentions, does the sound differ because of the wood around the speakers? Actually, yes. GP500, you can see here, it's a gloss finish. This is a more reflective finish, and this makes it a little brighter. And the GP400 is not this type of finish. So that is a contributing factor as to why the tone is slightly different between the 400 and the 500. Chris is asking a question, are the keys weighted or semi-weighted? Chris, you'll be able to rewind later. The action in the Grand Hybrid series is a grand piano action. So these are weighted action exactly as you would find physically. The weight of the keys, the mechanics of the keys work exactly as they would in a Bechstein grand piano. So incredibly remarkable feeling instrument, and obviously something that you need to put your hands on to feel. I'll just bring this out one more time for you, Chris, since you asked. This is what the action looks like inside the instrument. And so we've got a full-length grand piano key triggering a hammer mechanism that Casio has designed that simulates the vertical movement of the hammer in a grand piano. And I apologize for the reflections here, but I mean this mechanism physically, the shape, the weight, the path of movement is identical to what you'd find in a grand piano. So rather than simulating what a grand piano would feel like, we put a grand piano action in this instrument. So it is absolutely outstanding. So I'm going to dive in next to some of the other parameters again that you can adjust and customize on the Grand Hybrid. Again, these are things that I think really make the experience of this instrument really remarkable. So we just previously talked about damper resonance, and again, when your foot is on the pedal, that's the amount of resonance that's virtually occurring between the strings of the instrument. When the next parameter down is damper noise, and this is the sound that you would hear of literally the felt lifting off the strings of the piano. And I've turned this up all the way. This might be subtle even with headphones on, but so as I step on the pedal, you should be able to hear that sound of the dampers lifting off the strings. Obviously, these are a lot of the parameters that we're getting into are the things that recording engineers try to remove from a piano recording, but of course without these elements it doesn't sound authentic. And so having this remarkable damper noise is fantastic. By the way, the force at which you put into the pedal is going to affect how loud that effect is. So again, I personally find some of the default settings a little too conservative, so I tend to turn them up a little bit myself. String resonance. Some people call this sympathetic resonance, and this is the resonance between multiple open strings. So as an example, if I were to play a chord here, and I'm just going to rest my fingers on a C major chord without sounding anything. So I just put my hand on these notes really softly. If I play another note now that is harmonically in common with this C major chord, then we will hear these notes sympathetically vibrate. So hopefully you can hear that over the broadcast here. I'm actually going to turn that up even more. So, and for those of you that have other Privia or other Casio instruments, This is completely different technology. The damper resonance, the string resonance, all of this, this is a completely new engine from anything Casio has done before. So obviously I chose a different chord. So I'm playing an F major chord. So if I were to play a C sharp as an example, we're only hearing one note resonate the F a little bit because it's a fourth. So it's intelligent enough to know, which notes you are sustaining, and as you're playing the instrument, all of that sympathetic resonance adds to the experience. So this parameter, the defaults are pretty good. I tend to turn it up just a little bit, and maybe like a level 4. A little higher than that, then you can definitely hear those strings ringing out a little bit further. So next parameter, open string resonance. So you're probably familiar that on a grand piano, at about this top octave and a half, these strings ring freely. They do not have dampers on them, but they will resonate based on what you're playing in the rest of the instrument. So the amount of resonance that's occurring when I'm playing down here is this open string resonance, and it's really again a very subtle detail, but again, you can, if you listening carefully, these upper harmonics are really going to come through with that open string resonance turned up. Speaking of which, we're going to get into some other territories. So, in fact, everything from here on down are parameters that you're only going to find on the GP400 and GP500, and so this is some additional levels of detail that you find on the 400 and 500. So, the first being Aliquot Resonance, and I should have prepared a visual guide for what this one is. But if you were to look at the harp inside an acoustic piano, between the tuning peg and where the string is essentially fretted, all of the points there in those strings, all of those strings actually do resonate. And some people would reach up inside the piano and strum them with your fingernail. You'll hear all of those upper harmonics that are created by those short lengths of string. And of course, there's another set at the other end of the instrument where the string is tied off. And those are tuned in the instrument to match harmonically what's happening on the instrument. And this Aliquot Resonance, Casio has gone to great lengths to recreate, again, all of the nuances and detail of a piano, and you can actually accentuate those Aliquot frequencies. So this is, again, a very subtle detail. So I don't know that it's something that you can perceive over the webcast due just to the level of the quality of the audio. But it's a upper harmonic element that you can exaggerate just a little bit. So that's Aliquot Resonance, again, just a slight level of detail. And then we get into some of the really fun elements here that I just love as far as the experience of this instrument. Pedal action noise. So we have 3 pedals on the piano, and physically, that left piano, your soft pedal on a grand piano, and to answer your question, piano trends, are all of these features found on the 400 as well? That is correct. So from Aliquot Resonance down the menu from there, all these parameters are on the GP400 and GP500. So, pedal action noise. Your far left pedal, that's your soft pedal on a grand piano. When you press that pedal, you're physically shifting the action on the piano, and your hammers aren't striking all 3 strings where there are 3 strings. So you should be able to hear the little thunk. there as I press and release the soft pedal. That would be the sound of the action shifting. So physically with the mic, if I were to turn down this instrument, the pedal itself isn't making any noise, but if I turn the instrument back up, you can hear that mechanical noise from the pedal. Of course, the sustain pedal, so we hear the real sound of that whole damper mechanism going up and down. And your middle pedal, your middle pedal is kind of silent in this case. So it's really your sustain damper pedal and your soft pedal that mechanically are adding incredible nuances. So if you use this instrument to record, which many people do, all of these nuances and details can be in your recording as much or as little as you want. And I mentioned earlier that, and I got distracted by one of the questions. I completely forgot my train of thought. Do I know G minor ballad number 1 Chopin? I think I have played it once upon a time. And that's not going to happen today, unfortunately. So now I remember where I was going with my train of thought. So when a recording engineer is recording a grand piano, there's often noises that they're trying to at least make as subtle as possible in the recording, but you just can't eliminate them from the recording of a piano because of what's physically happening. And so if we were to turn all of these physical elements off, it wouldn't sound quite as real. So that's my point. So key action noise, and we've actually got key on and key off if we go to the last page here. So if I were to try and play a key here without sounding a note, so very subtle details. If you're on YouTube, do pop on some headphones. Hopefully you guys can hear this. So again, probably obviously exaggerated at this level, but you can control how little or how much you want with all of these parameters. So as I've mentioned, I like a few of these turned up a little from the defaults. I like to hear the damper noise a little bit, obviously not that loud. I like open string resonance turned up a little bit to hear all that resonance. And lid simulator, again, I can override the physical position of this lid. So if I'm looking for a warmer, darker sound, we can get something that's absolutely gorgeous. So anyway, that's some of the what we call acoustic simulator parameters in the Grand Hybrid. To answer your question, Joe, can I make it sound like a beat up upright? There are other presets I mentioned earlier. There's a Berlin, a Hamburg, a Vienna. In fact, each of those pianos have multiple variations. And back to the earlier question about does the GP400 sound warmer? Again, there's some ways to get further variation even beyond the parameters I mentioned just by selecting different presets. But going beyond the 3 different pianos, you'll even find some things like, I think there's a honky tonk. So there you go. There you go. So, so you can go a little bit that direction if you wanted to, Joe. Speaking of which, there are other sounds besides pianos on the Grand Hybrid. There are electric pianos. There are string sounds. There's a button here labeled Layer. When you press it, can get piano and strings together. You also have the ability to add a lower sound, like a split in your left hand as well. And there's also some other parameters. So using the left-right arrows, I can then turn on a split if I wanted. So, and there's even a bass with a ride and some other fun things that you can do. So layer and splitting, some great fun features there. Again, going beyond what, of course, a traditional piano can do. The Grand Hybrid is fantastic in that regard. Again, in live chat, please, yeah, you probably listened to me just play that riff. That's the magic of YouTube, that if you play copywritten music, they are just going to take it down. And so I have to come up with silly little things that I play all the time in these kinds of videos to keep YouTube from taking down our videos. Joe asking, of course, can you change the split point? Yes, the split point is adjustable. And so one other thing that's unique to the GP400 and 500, we were talking about all these different settings that you can go in and change. Your resonance amounts, your pedal action noises, all of these different parameters you can adjust. Once you've found something that you like, you can store it as a scene. That's what they're called here on the Grand Hybrid series. So, so you can store a scene. If we go back to the main screen, up in the upper right-hand corner, it says Scene, Enter. So if I press and hold the Enter button, it will allow me to select a scene. And there's a variety of scenes built into the instrument that help simulate a variety of different venues and or like pianos and environments that might have been used in the day. So, so you'll find Chopin presets in there and Beethoven presets and on and on and on. So the scenes are pretty incredible. Beethoven, Debussy lists, and so not only are you changing all the nuance components in the acoustic simulator, but you can also, there's also an effects engine in here where you can choose from a variety of different venues. So as an example, real quick, if I go into the effects section, you'll see that there's everything from stadiums, so some really gorgeous, nice long venues, to really subtle rooms. So and everything in between. One other amazing thing is you can also simulate not only what the instrument sounds like from player's position, which is what we've been listening to up to now, but what it might sound like from the audience perspective. And there are actually 3 different positions, listener 3 being all the way in the back of the venue. So I think this is particularly awesome for, if you're doing recording and you want the piano to be to sit in the mix a certain way. These different listening positions are really fantastic. So if I were to put it closer to the stage, listener 1, and you'll notice that the stereo mix is completely different. It's really really changes the experience of playing the instrument. So again, a number of different effects. We have listener position and player's position. Another thing that's happening is in this live stream, you are hearing the instrument the same way that I'm hearing it in the headphones. There are 2 headphone jacks, and I'm just taking so you could hear exactly what I'm hearing in the headphones. So really nice. There are also line outs, by the way, but here in the building, I just was using headphone outs because there's still people working here, and that was more effective for me to cancel the speakers out while I was doing tonight's demo. So. Other questions? Robert's asking when I'll release a follow-up to the PX560 and XWP1. Well, the 560s are relatively new instruments. Been out for less than 2 years, so that's still a young instrument, and we did have some software updates that came out earlier in 2018. I believe version 1.14 was released for that, so those are still relatively young instruments. XWP1 replacement, my fingers are crossed. Hopefully yours are. And you know, obviously we can't talk about future products. It's the one thing we can't. Even if I knew something, I can't release any info. If you're a 560 owner, I'm going to be doing an additional 560 programming video, much like this, hands-on with a view of the screen, diving into hex layers and some variety of programming things that you can do on the PX560. So do subscribe to this YouTube channel. Do watch our Facebook group. I know this evening's clinic was done with short notice, but I just got all this working yesterday, so I just had to get all the kinks worked out. But we're going to be doing more live clinics on 560, MZX, PX5, and more in the upcoming week. So definitely stay tuned. 560 I'm going to get to next week, probably a week from today on Wednesday. So stay tuned. Great question. All right, a couple other things with the Grand Hybrid. Well, and I will keep an eye on. And by the way, Joe, you were asking, about your split point. You can get into the settings menu and adjust that split point for you. There are recorders on the Grand Hybrids. In fact, there's 2 different recorders built in. One is a MIDI recorder. It will record internally everything that you're playing, all the MIDI information. There's also a USB slot down here on the end. You can plug in a standard USB thumb drive, and audio of everything that you're doing can be captured as a WAV file. So without hooking up a computer or without ruining that moment of inspiration, you can just hit the audio record button and everything will be captured to the USB drive. Particularly unique to this instrument is it will also record the MIDI data parallel to the WAV file data on that USB drive. So if you wanted to further edit it later on, make some changes, you have both your audio data and your MIDI data on that USB stick, which is very cool. Some other fun things. You do have metronomes, and I also want to talk quickly about something called Concert Play, which is a great feature of the Grand Hybrid as well as some other Casio instruments. And this is the ability to have essentially an orchestra playing along with you. And there's a variety of tracks built in. And if you look at the screen, you can see that I can choose from any of these songs here. And there's modes. Oops, I was looking for a file on the drive. Sorry, keep pressing the wrong button. That's what operating it from an angle here. There we go. So you can set this up so you can listen to the track with the piano in. So here you'll hear the actual piano part come in. You can even, so then you could switch to the same thing without the existing piano track. We provide you the sheet music for all of the music that's included. And if you have a USB drive, you can download additional concert play tracks from our international website, Casio.com, print out the PDFs of the sheet music, and you now have more tracks to play. So, Concert Play is a really amazing experience to play along with a symphony orchestra. Not too many people get that opportunity, and you can experience that on the Celviano Grand Hybrid. So again, watching the chat window, it's great to have so many of you here. Someone's asking, it's my dream to get on sensitive pianos. Yes. I hope you do. I hope you're able to get on one of Casio's pianos with sensitive keys. So hang in there, keep practicing, and maybe you'll own an instrument like this one day, the Grand Hybrid. It's incredible. Another question: would be great and crazy to add hex layers on the Celviano. It would. I've done it. So a great thing about this instrument, it has two types of MIDI. You've got USB MIDI and standard MIDI jacks on the back. So you could connect another Casio instrument such as a PX560, a MZX500, a PX5S, and get your synth sounds from those products, or even an XWP1 for that matter. Get the synth sounds layered with this gorgeous piano, and of course playing this instrument is unlike anything else besides the real deal. So yeah, absolutely, you can MIDI up to anything, and it's a great way to experience it. So other questions? I'm taking one last look here at the chat. I'm going to have to wrap things up before they turn off all the lights here in the building here at Casio tonight. So a few moments for last-minute questions. Again, I'll be doing another live event next Wednesday night. We'll do the PX560, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, if you have other questions, you can ask them on. There's several Casio Facebook groups. There's one called Casio Digital Pianos, and you can ask certainly your Grand Hybrid questions there. For those of you with PX560s and PX5Ss, there's a Facebook group for those. There's an MZX500 and MZX300 group as well. On top of all of that, there's a website called Casio Music Forums, and there's a dedicated section for the Celviano Grand Hybrid that you can check out there and get your questions answered. So, again, I would highly encourage you to, if you don't have one, to put your hands on this instrument. And like I said, there are a variety of, there are other hybrid instruments. No one has approached it as in such a genuine way as Casio has, especially delivering something that plays like a grand piano and not an upright piano. So do get your hands on this instrument if you get the opportunity. One more question in the chat. Joe is asking 2 layers above and the split below. 2 below? No, just 1. So a total of 3 sounds, 2 on the upper of the keyboard, 1 on the bottom, and that's that. And if you were to create a combination like that, again, piano strings, maybe something in the left hand, set those effects, change everything that we've talked about in this video, and you can store that as a scene and recall it at a later time, so you don't have to go back. So it's nearly one-touch access. Just hold down that enter button. Actually, I need to get out of concert play. Hold down the enter button, and now I'm in scenes, and I can choose from any of the user scenes. So you can store 10 of your own, plus the presets that will give you a variety of different. So how much for this one that I'm playing? Great question, Chris. The GP500, this is retail price $59.99, so $5,999 for the GP500, and it's absolutely amazing and worth it. That being said, you can get into a Celviano Grand Hybrid. The GP300 is $39.99. It doesn't have this black polish finish, and doesn't have all of the nuance controls that we talked about in this video, such as the pedal mechanical noises. You can't get in and adjust those, but the experience, the speaker system, the action is exactly the same. So, and then in the middle is the GP400 at $49.99, and these are U.S. retail prices. If you go to CasioMusicGear.com, you can find a dealer locator specifically for this series of products, and so I encourage you to find one near. Robert's asking for an editor. Not going to happen, Robert. At least, well, never say never. There are, I've seen some things, but again, I can't elaborate at this time. Realistically, no. I covered in this video the majority of the parameters and how you can get to them so quickly from the acoustic simulator options. There's looks like about 16 different parameters there that you can adjust, plus your effects. It would be cool to see those perhaps in an app, fingers crossed, but I can't guarantee that. So, great question. Thanks, Robert. Thanks for joining us. So for now, my name is Mike Martin, and tonight I am signing off. I really appreciate everyone coming and joining in and learning a little bit more about the Celviano Grand Hybrid, and look forward to seeing you next week on our next live clinic. Take care. Bye.